Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's Finance and Personnel Committee time. It is really 6:49 p.m. on April 2nd. And welcome, everybody. Let's take roll call. Sean McAllister present.
Mike Milkey here.
And Stevens present.
And lots of other awesome people here in the audience. Welcome, welcome. Item number 2. To approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting and place on file.
I will second that motion.
Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3, public input. Does anybody dare to speak?
There's no
No,
podium to come to.
there's no
I guess
podium.
there's,
Second call. Maybe we should have Sabrina speak just for, nope. Third and final call. All right, we're all done with that. No public input. Item number 4, Finance 2025 Omni Center Financials. Sabrina.
All right, so bear with me. In your packets, starting on page 1 is the balance sheet for the Omni Center. Going to page 4 is the budget report. If I can draw your attention to page 4, total revenues remaining to hit our budget is 84.93%. As of February 29th of 2024, we were at 81%. So we're a little behind that, but we just had a really big event at the Omni. So we should see that number go up in March. If you take a look at page 6, total expenses remaining as of February 28th of 2025 is 83.87%. As of February 29th of 2024, we were at 86%. So again, pretty close to where we were at in 2024.
Thank you. Any questions or?
so on the expense side, I mean, there's things like concession. I mean, there's things that are busier times and less busier times. At this point, traditionally being at roughly about 83% remaining on income and expenses, are you comfortable with that? Are we where we ought to be?
Yep, I'm comfortable where we're at. Mhm.
All right. Cool. I'll make a motion that we approve and place on file the 2025 Omni Center financials.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to approve the 2025 Omni Center financials as outlined by Sabrina. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. General fund financials.
All right, so next, starting on page 7 is the balance sheet. Then if you take a look at page 10, that starts the budget report. If I can draw your attention to page 12, we do have 95.29% remaining our total budgeted revenues. But a couple of things that are outstanding, a lot of our state payments and all of that will come in here at the end of the first quarter. So here in April, so very confident where we're at currently in regards to revenues. Then if I can draw your attention to page 24, our total budgeted expenditures, we have 85.03% remaining as of February 28th of 2025. As of February 29th, 2024, we had 85.06. So we are like spot on to where we were in 2024. So again, feeling very confident where we're currently at.
Awesome. Thank you. Questions? Motion?
Your turn.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 general fund financials and place on file.
I will second that.
Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve the 2025 general fund financials as outlined by Sabrina. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 6, Police Department Staffing and Facility Study Appropriations Requests. Chief Rick?
I will turn this over to Chief.
Chief, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so my memo before you kind of laid out, I think what brought us up to this point here. As a city, we're looking at long-range goals here as far as funding and alternative funding sources. And so this tied in directly with that conversation that, over a number of years, we've discussed, our shortages in different staffing positions and whatnot across the whole city, not just my department, but, many departments. And so the natural thought process of this was, if we are going to be seeking some type of alternative funding source, i.e. maybe a referendum, the best way to, provide credible data to our community is to have an outside consultant, similar to what the fire department just went through, analyze, our staffing, the facilities, potential growth, and where we are now and where we should be at, and give us a roadmap of where we should go. And so that way we can then use that data going forward in any kind of alternative funding discussions with our community. And so that's where I'm before you tonight, looking for, I guess, that approval of appropriations here to then seek proposals by companies that could perform those services.
If I could just add a couple of things as well too. I mean, I agree with everything that Chief has said. As you will recall, over probably the last year, maybe even a year and a half, there have been periodic discussions in regards to recruitment and retention challenges. Part of that, as you've heard from conversations with the chief in the past, has to do with staffing levels. What does that look like? The work that they continue to do gets more complex. The investigations they do, the stops that they do, the things that they have to do are getting more and more complex, take more and more time. So you're having less and less staff, available at any given moment based on the complexity of the things that are going on. And so, and as he also mentioned too, with this work group that we've been doing regarding funding, we've been looking at service levels as well as funding options moving forward. And this is just one tool that we could use in the event we have to go to some alternative funding source to say, this is why we would need whatever it is we're requesting. Much like you saw with the presentation of the fire department study, there's a ton of good information in there that's useful, helps guide decisions for council as they move forward with whatever decisions they make regarding our financial future. So I think that I just wanted to voice my support that this particular study, I think, is going to be just as useful as the fire department study was in regards to where we are now and what it is that where we should be. And if we do have to look at alternative funding sources, this would be a good base to help us promote that.
Oh, and one more thing, if I could just add, I think an important thing this consultant can do is look at the current fire department study as far as facilities and where that roadmap is and where could we tie in potentially to realize cost savings. Is there, if the fire department does build another facility, does it make sense to enlarge that to house, us or a portion of us in that, or take over a portion of, if they vacate a portion of the current facilities here in City Hall? Like, how does that best look? And so I think that's a real opportunity for potential cost savings going forward.
Cool. Questions? Yeah, do we need a motion before?
we can chat?
Okay.
Yes, generally you would have a motion first and then do a discussion after that.
I'll make a motion to approve the police department staffing facility study appropriations request.
I'll second for discussion.
Motion. Whoops. What item am I on? Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve the police department staffing and facility appropriations request. Discussion. Mike, you can go for Dan. Mike.
I just have a question. Do we know the last time we might have done something similar to this for the police department at the city?
I do not myself.
I'm not aware of any staffing study that was ever performed.
Okay. And then another question for Sabrina. I noticed in here, it talks about the money coming from two accounts, the city study account, which is around 45,000. Is that right?
Sorry, it was 45,000, but the council did approve to go forward with Baker Tilly,
Okay.
which cost 16,000. So remaining in that fund is 29,270.
Then for the other contractual services, I didn't see that one. I'm probably just blind, but do you have the number on that? What we have in that account?
Which account?
I thought
The other contractual
it says
services?
account 100-52100-290. Do you see the, on that page 26 of the memo?
I think our thought process on that account, there is not enough budgeted in that account to cover this amount. That would be the appropriate area to budget it to. And so our thinking, our thought process was at the end of the year that we may be able to have surpluses in some areas that we can then cover that.
Okay, okay. I wasn't sure if there was funds in there, but that makes sense.
Yeah, there's only 3,400 sitting in that fund right now, in that account, I should say. So, if the council would approve this, it would be, that those additional dollars would hopefully be offset by any type of surplus revenues or savings we would have in other areas. Or it would be using reserves, if that is.
Okay, thank you.
So you actually just answered one of my questions. I guess I know that we like to throw a lot of money at consultants, and I understand for the fire department, looking at a new site plan, especially, are we going to put it in the north, or are we going to put it over on the west side? That makes a lot of sense, but I mean, I gotta believe in my heart that the chief and the assistant chief knows where the shortfalls are. And if you had more staff, what we would do with them. And I'm not sure that with the benefit of getting an outside consultant to do that. I think the big question is how does that get funded? Does it go through, referendum or some sort of other fundamental change that brings more income into the city? I'm all for making sure that the police department is adequately staffed. I'm just not sure that consultant money is the best way to do it. If we got a budget for a certain amount in the course of a year, I'm okay using that, but I'm not super comfortable going over that amount and hoping for a shortfall in revenues. And remember, we've kind of tightened our margin in this last budgeting process. So I think it's kind of responsible to maybe back off from that. If we had the extra 50,000, I would just rather we paid staff in the police department or fleshed out the hours that we had now, rather than paying it to an outside source. I guess that's my initial thought. But the idea of combining a public safety facility with the fire department, that I could understand why that might need some outside professional perspective. So that would be my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I just have just a quick question, or I guess a follow-up. So, if we're going to a referendum, I'm not saying that's happening, but if we are, would a report from a chief and assistant chief, would that be substantial enough to show the public, present that, or do we need something? I'm not saying the chief doesn't have the resource to do this, right? But do we need something that's more in depth to show the public? I guess that's the question that I have when I'm thinking about this.
My 2 cents on that would be is chief and assistant chief should be sufficient, in my opinion, to be able to give that information. Having said that, and no offense, and chief knows this, him and I have talked about this before too, having that third party come in and give you what their recommendations are, what their findings are after doing a study based on the factors that they took a look at, in my opinion, lends credibility to what internally we are saying and could only support the, whatever the need is that we're looking for going forward. So that's how I would answer that question. If that helps.
Sabrina, do you have any insight on comfortability if we did do something like this? Not to put, I guess I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have any, insight in what your recommendations would be?
I guess I would agree with our city administrator that having a study showing what we need would hold more weight, and with the public. Being a voter myself, knowing that, we did the work, we went out for the study, that would make me feel more confident.
Anybody else weigh in or? Oh, sorry. Tim.
So I'm not sure if I heard this right or wrong. So is the shortfall 29,270, or that's what we have available?
That's what we have available. So the shortfall would be about 20,000.
And that would be for the 2025 calendar year?
Correct.
Would we anticipate wanting to do any sort of other outside studies in all the departments? I mean, are we kind of, I mean, it's only April, so are we kind of pigeonholing ourselves into no more studies if one became relevant?
Sure. Doing a citywide one would be, a great tool as well too. Don't have any plans for that right now because we do have the one that's going on regarding the job descriptions and the compensation portion of it. So don't have any studies planned for any additional staffing studies for any other departments at this time.
Is it possible to do some sort of maybe scaled back study that was closer to the $30,000 that we have in the budget?
So Chief and myself did a little bit of checking. I did some contacts with some administrators. He did some with other chiefs to find out who has done this before and what those costs are. And Chief can speak for himself, but roughly speaking, the $45,000 to $50,000 mark was roughly what people were spending on it. Did we go out to a number of different companies and find out if they had basically a cheaper version? That it did not. And I don't know, Chief can speak to if he did or not, but we just looked at what did others spend on theirs. So we had a ballpark number of knowing what to come forward with and even asking in the first place. So, and Chief, I don't know if you did any checking on any lesser expensive versions.
No, there were 3 different entities or a company and 2 agencies or municipalities I spoke to that all came in around that dollar mark, 40 to 50,000. And so that's why I thought, well, with inflation, because those were done, I think the most recent was 1 to 2 years ago. So I figured it probably is going to come in a little bit more expensive than what they paid. So I mean, we certainly could try to go out and put an RFP out for that lower amount and see what we get.
But we don't know if that would have the value of what you're looking to, you don't think that would have the weight of what we're hoping to accomplish?
Right. My fear, I guess, would be you're almost like doing a half study probably. And then are you spending that money and not really getting your bang for your buck because you've kind of just done a half job.
Should we refer this to council with no recommendation? Should we come with a recommendation or what's your,
I mean, we could have a vote and then.
should we do that? Okay, motion on the floor is to approve at this point, the police department staffing and facility study appropriations request. No more discussion, no more questions for anybody?
Just last thing. So, roughly, if this were to come in at 50,000, just estimating here, the city, or we'd be looking at an additional 20,000 that we'd be looking to fund this study with. And for that money, it would come from where again?
So the hope would be that we would go over in revenues or we'd go under in an expense account. And if not, then it could lead to a deficit that would then be against our reserves. $20,000 for our budget is probably pretty small. You guys did push me a lot on revenues this year. We know that. Interest rates are doing okay right now, so I feel confident in $20,000.
Okay, thank you.
All good? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm going to be a reluctant nay
That's fine.
without prejudice, but.
Sounds good. All right, motion carried. And that's it for number 6. Number 7, resolution 10.2025 to amend the 2025 general fund budget for the operation of the city of Onalaska for the year 2025.
Sure, if Sabrina or Chief are
Yeah.
going to have to cover this one.
I can start. So we had talked about this at our last council meeting. This is essentially putting in a resolution format what was already approved. So we did already approve purchasing the real property at 251 Mason Street. It was already recommended that the funds be used out of the equipment replacement fund. This is just putting it in resolution form for the budget.
Awesome.
Well, I move that we approve resolution 10-2025, authorizing The amendment to the 2025 budget allocating 75,000 in the equipment replacement fund for the purpose of purchasing and remodeling the storage unit at 251 Mason Street, number 14.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to amend the 2025 general fund budget for the operation of the city of Onalaska for the year of 2025. Any further discussion? See none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 8, EMS Funding Assistance Program FAP Grant.
Thank you. So we've already been successful with this grant. Just a little backstory on what the financial assistance program grant is prior to this year, this grant was always available. I think there were about $2.5 million available across the state of Wisconsin. And it was only given to transporting EMS agencies. As you know, we are not a transporting EMS agency. In 25, the state of Wisconsin increased that funding up to $25 million to include non-transporting agencies as well. And the transporting agencies got a bump. The formula is based off of per capita and other items. So it's pretty well cut and dried across the board of what you're going to get based on your population. We were awarded $81,482.82 through the FAP grant. There are a few rules with the FAP grant that money can only be spent on medical items. It cannot be used to replace your current budget. It has to be used to basically enhance your program. Right now, every year we budget about $3,000 in our regular budget account for medical supplies. So when we go out and use a 4x4 dressing, we're going to use that money to replace those items. What this will help us do is make our service better. So we've already designated some funds for the $81,000. We'd like to, or we purchased a third cardiac monitor, a third CPR device, a Lucas device. So what these units are going to do is, as we get busier, no matter which order you've called 911 in, so we're having doubles and triple calls more and more often. So if you're the third person that called that EMS run, you're now going to have a cardiac monitor on scene, a Lucas device on scene to start CPR if needed. So it's basically enhancing our service and making us better. Yeah, so that's pretty much the grant. I'll take any questions you have, but again, we've already been awarded the $81,482.82, and this is going to be a yearly thing. So
That's cool. Good grant. Motion?
This is just
Yeah.
informational.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion to accept the grant.
Correct.
Yes, it's correct. We don't need a motion.
Correct.
Cool.
Cool, good job.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, Chief, is this something that like you found out about this or like you already known about this? So like that's how we got it, like this
Yeah.
accepted, or like how did this come about?
right, yeah. So Assistant Chief Southworth applied when this came out, so it was a kind of a quick turnaround type of deal. We applied and got notice that we got it. I think it was pretty much if you filled out your application correctly, you were going to get the grant. The state recognizes that there are issues with funding EMS across the state, so it was kind of like I said, they increased it from $2.5 million to $25 million for this grant program, and it made it available to everybody. So
Thank you. It's awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. Very good. Item number 9, Amy, welcome to the party.
Good evening. As you can see, the HR report before you, we're happy to welcome our last fill of our police officer, Tyler Berg, started with the city in February. In other recruitment news, we did attend a job fair at UWL earlier this year, which was very well attended, and then had various other projects that we've been working on in HR.
Thank you. Any questions?
2 Bergs in the police department.
Yeah.
Common name.
Very cool. Item number 10, the approval of policy updates.
I will start off with this and then others will add to it as we go along. So this is kind of an extension of the work group that I put together last year, benefit work group. If you may recall, I believe it was November or December, we brought forward a number of other policies. These were the remaining ones. We just were kind of working through a few details on them. And so in the packet, again, obviously the memo that just highlighted some of the high level changes, but then also the policies themselves. Kind of want to go over each one a little bit individually so we can talk about them. And so the first one, let me back up a little bit. So this work group got together, they recommended some changes. The policies went to department heads, went to the employee engagement team. Individuals gave input on it as well. And this is ultimately what came out of all those conversations. So looking at the first one, which is the vacation policy, again, I'm just going to give a high level overview. So as I mentioned earlier, we've had a number of conversations about recruitment and retention, not only in certain departments, but just across the city overall. And I remember one of the council members indicating, are there things that we can do that aren't necessarily wage related in regards to keeping people or attracting people? From my perspective, the vacation one is probably one of them that kind of jumps out a little bit. So as you can see from there, our current, I shouldn't say, our current schedule shows, year 0, 1, 4, 8, 15, and 21. So we talked about, is there a way that we can continue to increase the amount of vacation, but still keep it at those benchmarks that we currently have? So if you look at the proposed, you'll see that, year 4 is still 15 days. Year 8 is still 20 days. So we didn't increase those benchmarks, but we just each year in between just increased it a little bit. So those individuals who have been working here, they don't have to wait 3 or 5 years, however long it is, before they get some additional vacation time. Again, it's a small, in my opinion, a small token, but just thought it would be a nice gesture and a way to kind of spread that out a little bit. One of the things we had to make sure was our new system could handle it, and they've told us that they can handle it. So we're and so that was one of the things that we just need to make sure we work through some of the details. Some of the other things in here are more housekeeping, for lack of a better word. It's just maybe clarifying some language, doing some practices that we do now and just adding it in there. I'm just going through it here quick. Carryover stays the same in regards to how much an employee can carry over. I think those were the primary ones, but I'll let Amy fill in anything else that I might have missed.
I think you got it all, Rick.
Okay. The other thing I'll add, so these bunch of policies would not go in effect until January 1 of 2026. There would just take some time that we would need to implement things. And so we would have that time then to work out any of the details that we would need to work out. So just wanted to point that out as well.
Okay, so that's true of vacation, sick, holiday, all of that.
Correct. All of these remaining ones here, yes.
Questions? Motion?
We're just going
I
to,
think Rick just stole Amy's thunder there.
Well, if I could add it, the makeup of our non-represented staff, 50% of that group are here 5 years or under. So this has the most impact to half of our staff.
are we doing a motion for each,
I-
policy, 10A, 10B?
I would say that we do each one individually because there may be points.
Yeah,
of
that's what I was-
discussion on each one, so.
Yep,
that's
that would work.
what the chair thinks.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve number 10A, policy 7.05 for the vacation.
Second,
Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve policy 7.05 on vacation. Any further discussion? Mike?
I just think if I was working here, I would really appreciate that. So I think it's a great touch.
Absolutely. Thank you. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. E?
I just want to add that I like the red striked out so we could see what changed. And as the
Mhm.
city administrator said, a lot of it's housekeeping, but there's things that if it wasn't struck or highlighted, like I'd go into this whole diatribe about, well, if they're hired for 30 hours, but then their hours changes,
Mhm.
are we going to forever look at them at this level, but then down below it fixes that. So, and in the old days, we didn't used to get red line changes, and it made it really confusing as to, well, what are we changing?
Yep.
So, this made it nice and easy. So thank you.
B.
Next one is the sick leave policy, and I don't want to steal Amy's thunder on this one either. But it was, again, some clarifying things. I'll just add that I think the main provision on this one is that for full-time employees, regular full-time employees, if they have exhausted all of their sick time in that given year, they do have the ability to ask that all of their sick time for that year be upfronted to them if they have some kind of a reason for it. That came about largely because of a discussion regarding new staff, because when you get 1 or 8 hours per month, you can use it up pretty quickly, especially if you have children, or if you have a medical condition. And so that was just a conversation about, particularly with those new individuals who maybe haven't saved up some sick time over a period of time. So that was the big one, but I'll let Amy address anything that she wants to there.
Especially important for newly hired employees because they don't have the protection for certain other things like family medical leave, for example. But obviously this could also be something for other staff that have been here for a number of years that don't have that luxury of having that built up sick bank as well. And so it's a little more flexibility. If that employee were to separate and they've been upfront at sick leave, they would owe back what they have used that they haven't earned. So there's really nothing that the city would be out in that respect. The other piece that was added to this was just the definitions. We did add grandparent, I believe, Rick. For some reason that was omitted. We had grandchildren, but not grandparent. And then we did move funeral leave to its own policy, which as you can see on the agenda as well.
All right, I move that we approve policy 7.06 concerning sick leave.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to approve policy 7.06 sick leave. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. 7.07.
The holidays and personal time, Amy, if you want to touch on that one.
So this one, just adding some clarity, change days to hours. Newly hired employees, making it consistent for the personal time. So previously, if you were hired in the first half of the year, you'd get 2 days, but those hired in the second half of the year wouldn't get any. So we're just splitting that so you get 1 and 1, or making that consistent for our new hires. So not really a change, but more, again, just making it consistent. And then for this, we did add personal time for our regular part-time employees. There was a lot of discussion at this group. I mean, and Rick, you can add of adding our regular part-time employees. Again, this impacts 10 of our employees currently, and I would foresee that number would continue to grow with the city. Of adding regular part-time to all of these policies. Again, we've had back and forth discussion. In the end, we did feel important to add at least personal time for our regular part-time employees so they can also have some time off that's paid as well.
Thank you. And I know a lot of companies too, and even mine included, where we're sweetening the deals with people is in what you guys exactly are talking
Sure.
about. So that really helps.
And I will say the benefit group talked about a whole gamut of things. And we talked about adding holidays, different holidays at other communities. We did a kind of a search as to what other holidays people, communities or employers do as well. I mean, so we looked at all of those different things. These are just the things that we decided to move forward type of a thing. So there were a lot of conversations regarding a lot of different items.
And then we're looking at like 15-minute increments versus days or half days. Did I read that in there?
Yeah, and instead of doing like hours or half hours, some employers do half-hour increments, and we've always done 15 to my knowledge anyhow. So we're just kind of, but I don't know if it's been in there before. So we're just kind of clarifying that that's how it can be used.
Okay, so if potentially say somebody I need to leave a half hour in the summer early on Thursdays to pick up my kid from daycare, they could potentially take 2 PTO days and just take a half hour each Thursday at the end of their day, and that would likely be approved.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'll make a motion to approve policy 7.07 for holidays and personal time.
Second,
Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve policy 7.07 holidays and personnel time. Any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. 7.08.
And I'm going to start with this one because this one's, I had a lot of I like the way this is currently set up, but I know it could be potentially open for some discussion as well. We did feel it warranted its own separate policy, so we separated it out. As you can see, we cleaned up the language in regards to what immediate family member is. And so it just made it more, easy to read, so to speak. I will say that, removing the 3 consecutive days and then doing the tiered system, that was probably the longest and biggest conversation that we had about this particular policy. Just a lot of discussion about, do we tell people that, this level of relative is more important to you than the other, so you get more time off, those kinds of things? Because you can think of all sorts of examples where a family dynamic is different regarding whether it's a, aunt, uncle, brother, sister, niece, nephew, whatever the case is. So each family is going to be unique in that sense. So there was a ton of discussion about that. So this is where it ended up at. The other piece of it is allotting some of that time for end of life. We just thought that, if someone doesn't have the sick time or vacation time that they can utilize, maybe someone has cancer as an example, and they know that the end of life is getting near and they want to spend that time. We felt it was important for those individuals to be able to spend the time with their loved ones while they were still alive versus, celebration of life after the fact. So that's why we worked in there those 2 days. But I also want to be clear that those 2 days are part of the 5 and the 3. Those are not in addition to. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. There are options to add on some sick time, as before to, the other part of it when we looked at the number of days, if it's your spouse or your child, before it was 3 days, are you ready to come back to work in 3 days? I wouldn't be. I mean, I don't know what any other individual would be, but it just thought there are certain circumstances where are you ready to come back in that short period of time? Now, having said that, obviously working with your supervisor, they could potentially work on some situations, but so those are just some of the conversations that went into it. I just wanted to kind of explain that those were some of the really kind of in the weeds conversations that we went into. We gave a lot of different scenarios, type of a thing. The other one we did talk about, where's the language? Partner. And so in regards to immediate family, there was a lot of conversation regarding domestic versus partner, whether we kept the domestic in there. Domestic partner used to have a very significant legal definition to it. Not as much anymore, but there still is some. And so what we just decided on, we were going to use the word partner. We just know how we're going to apply it. And I know Amy had looked up something. I'll let her talk on that as well too. So that was another aspect that we had a lot of conversation on as well too. So.
Thank you.
I guess I'll start with, for discussion, I'll move to approve policy 7.08 concerning bereavement and funeral leave, and then I'll reserve my time.
I'll second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to approve policy 7.08 bereavement funeral leave. Discussion.
So you did you answered one of my questions in your synopsis there, but so we're delineating bereavement time, and then there's the call it the end of life time, but the latter, the 2 days allotted for the end of life of an immediate family, is that like a separate bank because that's coming out of sick time, or is bereavement considered sick time as well?
So those 2 days would be part of the 5 or the 3 days of the bereavement funeral leave that would be provided by the city. Staff can take, I think it's there, an additional 2 days in one circumstance, additional 1 day using sick leave. That would be separate bank. But those 2 days for end of life would be part of that 3 or 5 day bank for funeral bereavement pay, or leave, I should say.
Okay, and so as a general rule of thumb, if say the employee's spouse were to pass away, they would get up to 5 days, and that would not affect their regular sick time that they'd accrue through the year. Okay.
That is correct. Yep.
Mike, anything?
Yeah, I just had a question. I see, we talk about in the up to 3 days portion for brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Is this related to mother-in-law, father-in-law as well? So, I mean, if I were to lose, if my mother-in-law were to pass away, I'd want to be there with my wife. So I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Might
you
wanna
bring up a
add
good
that.
point. But on the definition above for immediate family members, we do say the equivalent step family members and in-laws included. And so, yes, that would be included in there as well.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I just want to make sure we
Yep.
chat about that.
Because that did come up.
Thank you for thinking of all this too. This is a really nice. I like what you guys are doing here. This is
Thank you.
really nice. Amy, did you have something to add too, or? Nope.
No, and the other thing is we did feel it important again for our regular part-time employees that they get a prorated amount also for this as well. So that was also included.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Last one, 8.04, emergency action evacuation and safety plan.
And I'm going to let Amy do this one. She is our safety coordinator for the city, and so this one came from her.
So with the emergency action evacuation safety plan, I do apologize in advance that I do not have that nice, beautiful red line copy for you. We did feel that it would be very hard to read because there was so much change to like basically the format. You would have had basically 5 pages of strikeout. So with this policy, it was an existing policy. I did provide both of those for you so you could compare the original to the newly revised. Just a quick overview. For this policy, I do want to give credit to our Assistant Fire Chief, Jeremy Southworth. He really took the initiative, saw a need for this policy to be updated. I mean, it's been 15 years since this was looked at and had done the majority of the revisions of the research that went into this. So I do want to give credit to Assistant Chief Southworth for that great initiative. And he actually kind of spearheaded a new process for us going forward that we will be working with our safety committee members and doling out additional required policies to look at them in that same fashion so we can move forward with our safety policies a little bit quicker. So with this policy, basically the format was completely formatted, assigned a policy number. We included emergency action to also include medical, fire and smoke, active threat emergencies. Previously, it was evacuation and safety plan. And so it did get more in depth with all of those areas. In addition to emergency at City Hall, we also added Public Works, Omni Center, and the Aquatic Center, and then designated meeting locations for all of those, not just City Hall. So for example, if we were experiencing a fire emergency, if we were here at City Hall, our designation spot is across the street at the First Lutheran Church. If you're at Public Works fire emergency, you go to the Omni Center, or if you're at the Omni Center though, or Aquatic Center, those employees would go to the Ira Brown shelter. If it was a shelter in place, again, that's different. City Hall, we break into 2 groups, avoid the lobby, we go to the basement. Public Works, you go to a locker room, same with Omni, and Aquatic Center goes to the bathhouse. Any field workers, we wanted to address them in this policy as well, that they would go to the nearest appropriate facility. We did update the evacuation maps and then also removed reference to outdated information.
Cool. Thank you. Yep.
So on page 58 on appendix 1, is that just for information only? Because we've got some people on that are no longer here. So for example, if Sabrina needed to evacuate, she's not going to call Fred, right?
Correct. So that we remove that outdated information. In here, we have responsibilities for department heads, and every tier has their level of responsibility. We left that in there general. And again, employees know who their department head, they know who those people are, rather than having to update it with turnover and that sort of thing.
Right. I'm just saying we should either update the list or get rid of it.
Yep, and it was removed in the updated version.
Yeah, the second document there is the old version, and then the first one is the new. So the new one has it
Oh.
removed then. So, yeah.
You guys got that figured out?
Mhm.
Sabrina can still call Fred if she wants to.
I do have,
That'd be fun.
actually, first we got to make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve policy 8.04 for the emergency action evacuation and safety plan.
Second,
Motion by Mike, second by Dan to approve policy 8.04 emergency action evacuation safety plan. Question?
It's a quick question. So I know like this is great to have this plan in place. Do we have any, I know like at, different schools and things like that, they practice this, like practice a fire drill. Is this something that we ever need to put into place like that? I'm just out of curiosity, not to make you guys do this, but I'm just curious. It's something that, we have this policy, but people might not remember this. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, and this is,
safety day.
Well, I'm just wondering.
we do have drills to practice these type of things. I can't recall the last time we've had one. Chief, maybe you have a better recollection than I do.
We were actually going to do one last year, but then we got into updating this plan. I think we kind of fell off of it a little bit, but now we have a new plan in place.
I mean, I remember I used to love when we had the earthquake drills at school. I used to go to my desk, so I'll just.
Fun to-
Have that one.
No, I know.
The plan is there have been discussions to have more of those drills type of a thing. So yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
Cool. Motion on the floor is to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Last one, reclassification of event coordinator.
I can start out with this one and Amy can add in there as well too. So obviously there's the memo in there. I won't read the memo, but this came forward in 2024, sent it off to Baker Tilly to have it scored in regards to the reclassification. I believe in December, if I remember correctly, I believe is when they responded, if I can remember correctly, at that it should be changed to a grade 6. There was an oversight where it didn't get onto the February agenda. We didn't have meetings in January or March. And so now we're here in April that based on the recommendation from Baker Tilly that this should be reclassed to a grade 6. It indicates in there what the impact will be to the budget. I've had a conversation with Dan Wick. He wasn't able to be here tonight. He would have been here. He had another obligation, but talked with him and he understands that this is something that is going to be covered under his current budget. And so therefore I would recommend that the committee approve this and make it retroactive to the first full pay period in January of 2025. Mainly because it would have come forward otherwise in January 2025. So
Right, I'll move that we reclassify the event coordinator and update the job description. Yeah, it's a good motion.
Very good motion.
A second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to approve the reclassification of event coordinator and the updated job description. Any questions, Dan?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that, looks like the big difference is that the previous classification was required an associate's degree and the current or the proposed is a bachelor's degree. Looks like the main difference that I saw. I just want to make sure sometimes my understanding in the past, we would reclassify things to fit a person. And I want to make sure that we're reclassifying this is because it is appropriate in this position that this person had a bachelor's degree and for whatever reasons, the associate's degree would fall short.
based on my conversations with Dan Wick anyhow, is that he felt that this would be more appropriate based on the job duties and responsibilities. I don't know if you had any further conversations with him, Amy, but that was what was intimated to me. The only other thing I want to add as well too is I know we're undergoing currently the job description review and the study. Reason we're bringing this forward now instead of waiting for that to happen is because, again, we feel it should have been in effect as of January 2025. That was something I just wanted to clarify that I didn't mention before.
In setting this to Baker Tilly as a third party, neutral third party, they're not just looking at the changes to the job description, they're looking at the job description in its entirety. To say whether that was what made the difference or not. Again, we've had discussions that we've had so many reclassifications of positions and it's hard to know, where things are lying. And so again, this was a decision that was made to send this to a consultant so they could review it in its entirety. So again, this is one of those positions that was previously done internally. Again, we wanted the outside neutral third party. And so they looked at it, all of the job description.
Thank you. All good? Is the motion on the floor to approve? Any further?
The motion has been made and
Okay,
seconded.
sweet. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. We have no further business.
Oh, we have item 12.
Yeah, that's the last one. Motion.
It's your last meeting. You want to do it for F&P?
Sure. Well, I'm really gonna miss this, so maybe I should go into some long extemporaneous speech,
Oh, God
but I
help.
won't. I'll just say I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Dan, second by Mike to adjourn at 7:38. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Goodbye.
I feel like you just had it.